and welcome to another edition of Talent Talks. Today, I have the pleasure of having two powerhouse women on the show today. I want to start with some intros. So, we have our friends here from AMS, and I just want to be really upfront. AMS Hourly is part of our client advisory board. I got the chance to meet Quincy, and I'll let her do her own intro. But she was so amazing. I immediately said, "Hey, who do you have that can be on the show? This would be hilarious and awesome." So she tapped her friend Tina, and we are all here today. Quincy, do you want to start by giving the audience just a little overview of you and your role?
Yep, sure thing. So my name's Quincy Valencia. I am the Vice President and Head of Product Management for the product division of Mann Solutions, which is our newest venture at AMS as we push forward into the future of work and how we can support our current and future clients. And we've decided to do that through actual product development and management. And I'm heading that the product side of that.
Amazing. And Tina, just a few minutes, a few notes about you and your role at the company.
Yeah, quickly. So as you mentioned, I'm Quincy's friend and colleague. Colleague first, and then we became friends. Fortunately, we have a really amazing team here. As Quincy mentioned, we are a product division, a brand new product division within Mann Solutions. And we are currently working on building and launching Hourly by AMS, which is our first ever product. We're super excited to share a little bit about it.
Well, and I love the concept of it being about hourly workers, right? Because hourly workers have probably taken the largest hit due to COVID. And for you guys to really have a focus here is amazing. So I'm sure there's different challenges with hourly workers, and how are you supporting them? What are you trying to do differently? Tell me a little bit about the practice.
Sure. So the reason that we went with Hourly first as a product for AMS is because a couple of years ago, my boss and our managing director, Jerry Collier, and I were lamenting how over the course of about 20 years, we've continued to see product after product come to market and really seeing point solutions that are very good, but we don't really think that we at large, the TA community, has served recruitment in the hourly space as well as has been done in perhaps the professional place. And what we're seeing really now from COVID and the way that the market has contracted is we're seeing that, it's been traditionally treated as a commodity. So workforce solutions and technology and even recruitment organizations at large have been really built to support that professional community. And the hourly workers have just been kind of, let's see who comes in and if they work for us, they do. And if they don't, they don't. And we can just get more. And we think that's a disservice really for the workers, but certainly for the companies that employ them, because these are the workers that are actually driving the revenue up front in pretty much all of the markets that we'll look to serve those segments. So whether it's quick serve restaurant or whether it's retail or whether it's warehousing, things that, as we've seen through COVID, clearly illustrated are driving our economy. And so we saw this gap and were given the opportunity to create this product division and decided to focus on hourly for that very reason, not just in an altruistic way to start treating human beings as human beings, whether it's through the hourly process to hire or whether it's through rejection and doing that in a dignified way that still serves both to support the employer brand, but also to support the people who are applying, the applicants, in their mission to find new jobs.
Yeah, and obviously too, Jen. So obviously we started this mission well before COVID hit, right? So we were just getting ready to launch Hourly, to really start talking externally about it. We've kind of been quietly building it over the last year or so. And we were really ramping our activity up right when COVID hit. And we definitely had that moment of, bleep, I won't say it because I don't want you to have to edit me. But we had that moment, like these are the folks that we've purpose built this platform for are now finding themselves out of work. And we pulled back for a second and thought about it. And then something really amazing happened. We started having conversations with companies that really relied on those hourly workers, right? And we started having these great conversations with folks that knew that this was actually a huge catalyst for needing to do something different. So we started talking to folks that went from, we had one company we talked to really early in the pandemic when we were still kind of I mean, we're still in a lot of uncertainty, right? But when we were really not sure where this was going, how long this was going to last. And we talked to this company who had, I think, 130 or 140 recruiters, and they were down to a team of 2 of them, basically the 2 leaders. And they knew that that wasn't going to scale when they did start to open back up, right? When they needed the hourly workers back. So all of this really ended up leading to, better conversations than we ever could have imagined with companies, because it really served as a catalyst for, we have to do something different. We have to serve, this audience differently when we do start to open up. Whether, some companies we're talking to are rebuilding, but some companies are growing, right? Some companies have managed to actually be busy and grow. Some of the folks on our advisory board are in, retail functions where they actually, were busier than ever during the pandemic. So it's been a really kind of interesting, we've had 2 different sides of the conversation with folks.
It's really interesting to me. Throughout my career, a significant portion of the hiring that I managed was hourly. And I also did professional roles, but I like the sort of, I like the way that you're honoring the people on the front lines, right? Like, we never talk about data scientists as getting butts in seats or doing the mirror test, right? Like, that's not a thing. But with hourly employees, I think some businesses, especially before they realize, what they were contributing to the bottom line, they maybe saw that hiring as secondary. So I think that it's a really good niche and a good place to fit in. And I think that you guys are doing absolutely the right thing. Now, so you talked a little bit about treating the candidates differently and really honoring them as like our core workers. Are you doing that with the platform, or tell me a little bit about how you're materializing that as a company?
Yeah, it was one of our foundational pillars when we were building this. We were really setting out to make sure that we're changing the experience for the candidates who are applying for the jobs, and for the hiring managers who needed to figure out I have 4,000 applications to my one job. How do I know who's best for this job? And so if you go through a traditional hiring experience, particularly in these hourly roles, you apply, and generally they ask for a resume, and you may or may not have one, and you certainly don't have one on your phone. And almost 70% of candidates for these jobs are applying from their phone or mobile device. And you're asked for a resume that they may or may not need, and then you're asked to repeat that information again on a formal application, and you're asked for a blood sample, and you're asked for your social security number, and you're asked for all of your passwords and things that you don't need. So all of the data that nobody needs to give, and it feels invasive. And then you go through and you spend all this time and you invest it, and then you don't hear back, and then you don't hear back, and then you don't hear back, and then eventually you might hear 6 months down the road, sorry, this rec is closed. Meanwhile, you've been working in a new job for 6 months. And it's just aggravating, frankly. From the client side, this is the process that you've put in place for these applicants, and they're taking time to go through with you, and you're not getting back to them, and it does nothing to support your brand. And when we're looking at, most of these industries are consumer facing, and you want to either gain them or keep them as your customer. And so as we're looking to marry that up, and how do we really put some dignity in that when we're letting, thanks for taking an hour to apply with us, but by the way, we're never going to let you know if we're interested in you or not. We wanted to put some more value there, and we wanted to make sure that whether somebody got a job or not, they are left with a feeling of something positive about the company. And so building in communication throughout the process, not just an automated thanks, we'll let you know, but really targeted communication depending on where they are in the process. So that's there. Whether someone whether they're rejected or whether they actually get a job, we're giving them customized content to help them either grow their career or conversely to continue along the path of looking in their search. So it's, we as XYZ company didn't have a fit for you this time, but we're really committed to supporting our community and making sure everyone has the employment that they're looking for. So we thought this particular content that we then sent them, which by the way is tailored to them based on their own personality profile, we're hoping that this helps you along the way. So it's really, again, it's putting dignity into the process, but it's, again, not just altruistic, the communication and what it is we're sending and the content, but it's really helping support that brand, and it's making it easier for our hiring managers on the other end to kind of filter through the multitude of applications that you may get to know, hey, who might actually be better for my job anyway.
That's really interesting. Like, I love the idea of customized feedback, but that could be really kind of a heavy lift, right? Like if someone was trying to do that for every single candidate every time without some sort of automation. Are
Mhm.
you using tools to do that, or how are you doing that in a scale that you can replicate?
Yeah, we absolutely are. So this is not something that we're trying to burden a human being with doing, and that's part of it. It's how do we automate what we can by still using this concept of mass personalization, which sounds like an oxymoron, and still allow that recruiting team, whether it's the recruiting team of two that Tena just referenced, or whether you are building them, to add value in the process. So we believe there's still a need, not just room, for talent acquisition professionals, but how do we free them up to do work that is actual value add? So recruiting in those rural areas where, programmatic advertising may not work, although obviously through our partnership with Joveo, we're a firm believer in that, and it's a core part of our product. But to the point of personalization, we've partnered with a company called Tradeify, which is an assessment company that has one that's built specifically for this market, completely valid and validated. It takes a candidate about 90 seconds to get through and gives them the same level of confidence in the outcome as something that has traditionally taken, up to an hour to complete. And so we're providing a better experience for that candidate. Their results are compared against a benchmark of existing employees that have been successful within that specific organization to say, hey, this person's about a 90% match. We're going to invite them automatically to self-schedule for an interview. And so using that same information, we know what their personality profile is. And so we have content that's been developed for that specific personality profile. So it's, hey, let me help you better prepare for your interview based on your profile. Here's some things that you may want to ask or do. Or look out for during the interview. Or if they're rejected from a job, for example, it's that same message that we just talked about. Hey, we're committed to, as a brand, to making sure that everyone in our community is fully employed to their desire. But so let us help you, and let us give you some tips and some things to read and some things to look into to help you specifically based on your profile, see the opportunities and to really optimize those things that you already do really well.
Yeah,
I love. Go ahead, Tena.
Jen, I think, in our industry, in HCM and especially talent acquisition, automation has really blown up. Automation, artificial intelligence, and it's become really synonymous with impersonalization. So, a lot of times you end up seeing all these images of like bots, right, with automation. And we kind of believe the opposite. We think the automation can actually, as Quincy said, drive better or, at scale personalization. So we're really using automation not to remove the human or remove the experience, but actually to supplement that experience and make it even more personal and more human.
I love that. And I also, you guys both are alluding to sort of the fact that automation isn't robots doing rote tasks, right? It really is about taking repeatable human skills and letting humans do important thinking work and letting the automation sort of do the, like, I don't want to call it the dumb work, but like the not so smart work, match it, send the email. And I think that bodes really well for talent acquisition and how we manage our candidates, how we manage our employees, and how we manage our image, really, especially as layoffs are occurring and we're doing more with less.
I think you're right, Jen, but I think it goes a step further than that. I mean, the automation traditionally is exactly what you've talked about. But with conversational AI, for example, we've set out to really almost replicate the experience a candidate may have with doing, an initial phone screen with a recruiter. And, the recruiter asks a candidate something, they respond. The candidate then may have a question. The recruiter can respond and then continue through the process in a really conversational, personal sort of way. And we've set out to do that for each of our brands, specific to those brands, specifically to those clients, in a way that is automated through programming and using natural language processing and other things in the back end that people like to throw out acronyms on. But really the point is, let's make it feel like they're talking to a recruiter, but the process is automated so that when they really do need to speak to a human, there's a human available because, to your point, Jen, they're not busy doing administrative tasks in the back end that can be easily automated, the traditional robotic use.
I love just the idea and how that materializes. I had a boss a million years ago that said to me, "You are responsible for one of the top 5 moments in most people's lives, right? Getting a job is a really big deal." And I like the focus on making sure that meaningful conversations are happening and nobody's sort of left behind. As you were talking, Quincy, I thought, yeah, nobody left behind. So I think that that's great. So we're talking about hourly here specifically, and it's sort of a topic of where we need hourly workers in order to continue the day-to-day work. And like, what do we think the economy and the recovery is going to look like for these hourly workers? Do you guys have a sense of where that's going?
Yeah. So I'll start if I could, because now I'm talking and you're not going to stop me very easily. Sorry. The economy is what we all see out there. There's several different economies happening at once. And so your traditional indicators of economic growth and that it's thriving, some of those are out there. The stock market has been performing really well, and there has been job growth and so on and so forth. But the job growth is sort of going up and down. It really hasn't been a V-shaped recovery. And as we wait for that second strong wave of COVID to hit, and when I say we, I mean those of us who are in this business, but certainly those who study it, the economists and the analysts, are predicting more layoffs, perhaps more bankruptcies. And so what's different here is that it's not that traditional recovery from an employment standpoint that we've seen previously, but it's going to be a lot of up and down. It's also going to be different for the type of work that's done. So, for example, I had vacation. I've been lucky enough to be employed through this entire process, but I had some vacation and I was bored. And so I signed up to be a shopper for one of the shopping companies. It's the gig work. You sign up, you're approved, you log in and say, here's a job that you could do today. And I went and did it. And I, just for fun, frankly, to see what it was like. And I spent about 5 hours one day doing it, and I made about $150. And if you look at that compared to the traditional, if you make $10 an hour, it'd take you a lot longer than 5 hours to make $150 actually. And so I think the recovery is going to look different for the employee. Is there what type of work that they're looking for? Are they going to continue in the same, I want to work 25 hours a week at this coffee shop or whatever it is. And then if I do I want to supplement that and get some more hours through some of these more, the gig work that everybody's been talking about, but nobody could really identify. And I think that's going to be more and more important as we go forward, when, like I said, you've got the stock market that's doing really well, but let's be honest, that doesn't really impact your frontline hourly worker directly. It's kind of business as usual for them. So as the market and the business indicators and business growth and slow will continue to go up and down until we have probably, a vaccine that's widespread and that sort of thing. It's going to be more important that the employee has more jobs to look at, has more opportunities, and the type doesn't really matter. So if you go from one place for a W-2 job and another place for a gig job, and it's not going to be as important. We want to make sure that we're helping to drive economic growth through making sure that there are employees available and candidates available for those jobs when they do come open for the companies who scaled back to 2 recruiters.
Right. Tina, what would you add to that?
I read a really interesting article yesterday from a restaurant association talking about a lot of restaurants are now feeling like they are getting to the level of business that they need their full labor force back. And I know that's not the same in every part of that's what makes it tricky, right? It's not the same in every part of our country. I would say even within states, it's probably different. And one of the indicators they actually talked about was not just the fact that they're hiring their labor force back, but that they're seeing innovation. So people are feeling confident enough that they're not just hiring people back, but they're also starting to, invest and innovate and grow, which I thought was a really interesting way to look at it. So I think that's great to see. I think we know that the experience when we go, I actually traveled for the first time last week, which was really interesting, since I think early March. And, the hotel that I stayed in was pretty empty. So I know, some segments of our market are going to take a while longer to bounce back. None of the services inside the hotel were open yet. So it was pretty kind of bare bones. So obviously they're operating at a much lower staff level. But then, I went over, walked across the street to a store, and it was kind of like nothing had ever happened, right? The Whole Foods across the street was full and fully staffed and people. So I think we're going to continue to kind of see all different patterns. I don't know that there's one answer to that question.
Yeah, I think that that's a very true point. And I'll end with this. That gives me hope, right? Like all of my friends are in the talent acquisition industry. They're experiencing downturns and all of those things. But I think everybody's starting to see, particularly the hourly workforce, start to creep back and get a little more active. And so excited to hear everything that you guys are doing to make that process for hourly workers and for companies something that is personable, sustainable, and also really bodes to kind of the most important part of our business, which is people. So I thank you guys so much. And for our viewers, stay tuned. I will have Tena and Quincy back for another episode, and we'll get a little bit more into the how they do the hiring, which is totally exciting. So stay tuned for that. And again, I thank you both, and I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me today.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.